Well, here we are again. Hi, welcome back. So, has everyone seen 365 Days on Netflix? I'm talking about the original one, the one that came out in 2020. If you haven't seen it or you saw it and you immediately pushed it out of your brain and you need a refresher, I do have, before you watch this video, a book versus movie video for the first book / movie. I'll link that in the description below. But now here we are at the sequel. This sequel, the one that I told myself I was not going to read, but clearly that was a lie. So in this video, I'm going to be comparing This Day, the book versus the movie. Before we dive into that, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want more book videos. And obviously this video has all of the spoilers, so beware if you don't want anything ruined for you. So for starters, this book and the movie, they share characters and the basic idea for the plot. But from there, the movie takes off and does its own thing. Really, they felt like they were two completely different stories, but they also shared in the fact that they were both, like, incredibly boring. Like, I'm telling you, like, they drug on and on. So, like, let's start with the book. When we last left Massimo and Laura, she had told him that she was pregnant, and the book just ends. So the book starts out with Massimo and Laura. They're getting married and they have this big celebration that's basically like showboating for all of the other mafia heads. And at the wedding, we learn that Massimo has a twin, just out of nowhere. He's just like, oh yeah, by the way, I have a twin. Like, never has he been brought up before. And I was reading that when he was like, I have a twin. And I burst out laughing because I had this thought in the movie where they like potentially do some like Lindsay Lohan Parent Trap shit in the movie and having the actor play both parts. So hold on to that thought because we're getting there. I did read the book before the movie came out. So I had all of these thoughts for the movie and that was one of them. So we're moving right along and the book moves quickly, basically because of the poor writing. Like, and just with the first book, we have, like, the plot is basically just being laid out for us, like, bullet points. Like, she'll be like, oh, and then this happened, and then this happened, and now we're over here, and this happened, and, like, it's just terrible. So we get told in one of these bullet point plot points that he has his twin, and then at the wedding reception, Massimo's twin tries to put the moves on Laura, and she's like, I know what Massimo looks like when he looks at me. So his plan didn't work. And so her and Massimo like go on this long honeymoon after the wedding. And when they get back, Laura is basically like casually informed by her friend Olga that at the wedding reception, Massimo's twin had and beaten her. And everyone's just like, oh, he has anger issues when he's on coke. And everyone, including Olga, was like, yeah, it's okay. It happened, but you know, it's okay. We've moved on. And I'm just like, we're just gonna let this go. Like, we're just gonna give me this information and then we're just gonna move on. Like, it's no big deal because Olga's all good because, like, apparently she's in love with Massimo's other brother, Demencio. And so she's like, well, it's okay that that happened because then that made me fall in love with Demencio more. And to Laura's credit, she was very upset about it. She's like, why didn't anybody tell me? Like, what's going on? But then, like, just like everything in the book, it just kind of gets quietly like, shh, it's okay. Let's move on. Let's go to breakfast. Let's sleep until noon. It's okay. Let's just move on. Let's just like shove all of these like random plot point like problems just like under the rug. Like, it's no big deal. So in the fashion of moving forward and getting on with their lives, Laura and Olga go to a girls' trip to like a spa, and Laura decides that she really wants to go back and see Massimo for sexual favors. So she leaves the spa and she goes back to the mansion where there she catches Massimo f***ing his ex, Anna. Which to me, it's pretty obvious that it's going to be his twin, because why else did we have this big setup so much in the story with the twin? if he's not going to be the one like causing this conflict. But she reacts without asking any questions or confronting him at all. She sees it, he doesn't see that she sees it, she immediately leaves, and her and Olga skip town. And during this time when they're leaving and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do, the author gives us, by way of this little diatribe that Laura does, an entire recap of the first book. So in this paragraph, so the first book gets summed up in this one paragraph. And she said, "What the fuck am I supposed to tell her then?" Talking about calling her mom and telling her what happened. "Hi, Mom, I'm going to be honest with you. I was kidnapped 3 months ago because this guy kept dreaming about me, and then I fell in love with him. But don't worry, it's only Stockholm Syndrome. Anyway, he's the boss of the local mafia, and he kills people for a living. And we're going to have a baby, and we're actually married now. We were having a good time spending the money he made by selling drugs and guns, but then he cheated on me, and now I'm running from the mob and going to hide in Hungary." And I'm just like, okay, so you're aware of your situation. Like, you're aware of, like, this whole thing that's going on, Laura. Like, okay, it's good to know. I just want to check in. I just want to make sure that you understand what's happening. So, like she mentioned in her little rant, they're going to Hungary. And they stay there for 2 months with this older guy that Olga used to sleep with. And it's so random. It's them just hanging out, like, just like with the rest of the book, they're just hanging out all the time. And so when they're there, Laura becomes close with this guy's son, and he tells her that he's gay. But then when they go to go back to Poland, he gets super aggressive and weird, and he's like, "I'm not gay, I want you." And I just have to read this section because I was like, what? Like, it was just so random. And it came out of nowhere. I didn't have to wait long until my new gay brother stormed into my room. He slammed the door behind him, stomped across the room, grabbed me by the throat with a muscular arm, and shoved me into the wall. I felt the familiar tickling sensation in my stomach. Only Massimo had ever treated me like that. Attila's tongue pushed his way into my mouth, and his body stuck to mine. I closed my eyes, feeling like I had gone back in time. Our tongues danced around each other, and his long, strong hands cupped my face. His soft lips clung to mine, hot, passionate, and wild. "Attila," I whispered, shocked, pulling my head back. "What are you doing?" you said. "You really believed I was gay?" he asked, his tongue tracing a line down my neck. "I'm as straight as it gets, Laura. I've wanted you since I first saw you. I adore your smell. I love watching you when you sleep. When you..." I just can't even with this book. It just... "I adore your smell. I love watching you when you sleep. When you wake up, I love the way you cross your legs when you brush your teeth, or when you bite your lip reading books, or when you're deep in thought," he sighed. "Oh God, how I wanted you." "But I'm pregnant and married to a mafioso." "Don't you understand?" I pushed him away. "I've treated you like a brother, kid, and you pretended to be gay so that you could, what, sneak in one night and fuck me? Jesus, that's twisted." With rising fury, I stepped to the door and opened it. "Get the fuck out." He didn't react. I screamed, "Get the fuck out of here, Attila." Olga, ever the loyal pit bull, appeared out of nowhere and stopped in the doorway. "What's going on? Why are you shouting?" "No reason. Pack your things now. We're going." 2 hours later, we were ready to leave. And that's the end of Attila. We never see him again. It completely fizzles out. Like I said, 2 hours later, they leave. And I was thinking to myself, if this guy character does not come back in the story at all, what was the point of having this in there? Like, what was the point of having this, like, half a paragraph conversation where he's like, "I want you so bad"? Like, that's just poor storytelling to bring up this, like, random, like, dramatic plot point and then, like, never revisit it ever again. And, like, that's what happens. Like, he's just never brought up ever again. Like, their entire time in Hungary is just, like, pretty much forgotten about, like, after she gets back and they talk about it. Like, it's just, it isn't a thing anymore. And I knew that there was going to be some sort of, like, secretive guy in this book. And so I was like, is it him? Like, is it Attila? Like, does he just kind of, like, reappear back in her life? Because, again, like, why did we spend, like, 2 months with him and, like, have that, like, weird confrontation? But no. Her and Olga go back to Poland to live their lives. And Massimo finds Laura, even though he couldn't find her for 2 full months. He finds her back in Poland. He breaks into her apartment. He has footage up on the TV, and it's video, and he's like, it was my twin, duh. And he's like, here's an image of me when I was in a meeting, and this is me, this is my twin. As you notice, there is a birthmark on his left butt cheek. I do not have that. And it's like, yeah, Laura, you probably should have, like, said something. Like, if you walk in and, like, you see your spouse having sex with someone else, like, you think you'd say something and be like, what are you doing? And then you'd realize, like, oh, that's not my husband. So they go back to Sicily at the mansion, and he's mad at her for just abandoning him, like, which that's fair. And then, like, they don't ever talk about it at all. Like, and that's just how all of the dialogue in the book was. Like, it would just jump around so quickly. And so he's talking about, like, how he's, like, upset and was, like, worried about her. And he's like, I'm going crazy with fear is all. I'm afraid something is going to happen to you or the child. I wish it was born already so I wouldn't go crazy, I finished for him. Stop worrying, darling. Be happy that I'm yours and yours alone. In a few months I'll have my hands full with raising our beautiful daughter. He raised his eyes and shot me a strange look. There was something completely new in his stare. Are you suggesting you might not have time for me? He asked in outrage. Just think about it, baby. I'll be a mother to a little child, and children need all the attention. Our child will be entirely dependent on me. So yeah, I won't have much time for you. It's only natural. The child will get a nanny, Massimo said before opening the door. If I'm in the mood to f*** your brains out, no one, not even our child, will stand in my way. I drank the milk he offered me and suddenly realized how late it was. I couldn't keep my eyes open. Massimo sat in bed with his laptop working. I rolled to the side, put my leg on his, and cuddled against his shoulder. I fell asleep. Like, we're just gonna, like, in the middle of this, like, argument conversation, she's just gonna be like, oh, I'm tired. Like, I'm just gonna go to bed now. And it's just kind of like, everything was just so unresolved. So, they all go back to Sicily for a short amount of time, like I said. They're always constantly going around places. So they go back to Poland again. Laura visits her parents. Her mom discovers that she's pregnant and she didn't know that before. Again, they have this weird stilted dialogue fight, and it's very quick and it ends in like a page, even though like this is it should be a dramatic thing. Like, you know, it's your mom and you think that you would want her to know, but it's very, like, quick and it's over very soon. What if he gets bored with you, my mother asked, raising her voice. He'll dump you and the child. That's not how I raised you, she repeated. A family needs 3 people to function properly. How could you be so irresponsible? She was trying to control herself, but that was a losing battle. Have you ever thought how hard it would be to be a single mother? This isn't about you anymore. We got married a week after I left Poland. No prenup, I growled at her. So all his money is mine now. I have so much money I can use it as diapers for the kid. And Massimo loves me and the baby so much that he'd rather die than let us leave. I raised my hand, shutting her up before she interrupted me. And trust me, I know, I already tried. Don't judge me, Mom, because you know next to nothing about my life and the situation I'm in. I cried, sprinted down the stairs, leaving her. And that's it. Massimo finds Laura, and then she tells him that she told her mom the whole story when she quite literally did not. She's like, I'm sorry for yelling at you. Sometimes I can't control myself. I rolled onto my back. And she didn't only learn about the baby. I told her about our marriage too. I told her the whole story. It's like, okay, well, you didn't tell her that little paragraph that you told us earlier about the whole kidnapping and everything. Mama still doesn't know about that. So, blah, 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 more life stuff. Massimo's doing, like, business stuff. Massimo, get ready for another work trip. I'll be back before 4. And she's just like always in bed. And like also in this book, the writing. She always is like, will say like she woke up at a certain time and then like it's the continuation. I wonder if it just drives me nuts because she'll literally say that like, oh, I woke up and it's like noon, and then she goes to breakfast and then they're like, oh, it's morning, and they say it's 7, and then like later, like a paragraph later, they'll say it's like in the afternoon again. And it's just like, she's not keeping track of what times she's telling us that the story is happening. And so like a paragraph later, she forgets what time she already told us it was. And it's like, maybe you should stop telling me what time she wakes up because you can't keep track of it and it's not working out very well for you. It also drives me nuts that she like will give us always a description of like what she's eating or whether or not she has like milk in her tea or what like the temperature is like outside, as if that's like a really good indication for like descriptors for the book or in the book. And it's like, I don't really need to know what temperature it's outside or like what she's eating for breakfast. Like, I don't feel like that's not a really good way of like how to show me like that you're being descriptive. Just the writing, man. I just like, we jump to this scene where Olga runs into an ex of hers at a restaurant they're at. And I want to give you just a little more taste of the writing. Suddenly, Olga halted, staring at a man sitting at one of the tables. "Holy motherfucking shitballs," she swore, her grip on my hand tightening. I followed her eyes. The cause of her sudden immobility was evident. A handsome young blonde man was rising from his chair. Wide torso, perfectly fitting expensive jacket, luscious lips. It had to be said that Adam was one hell of a stud. He's a stud. He was rich, attractive, and intelligent. He caught Olga's eyes, pushed himself to his feet, and started heading our way. His confident gait led him straight to us. He stopped too close, kissed Olga on the cheek, and gave me a terse nod. So then he also proceeds to kiss her. Demencio sees this, freaks out, gets arrested for beating Adam up, and then later we learn that Olga fucks Adam to get the charges on Demencio dropped. And then Massimo is like proud of her for doing this. Like he tells Laura he knew Olga did this and like he likes how far she would go for family. And then we move on. Like that's not really even like that big of a plot point anymore and we just move on. So we're on another trip. I don't even know where we are at this point. They travel so much. So now we go to watch an MMA fight. And of course, Laura's ex is the MMA fighter. And then after the fights, Massimo catches her ex kissing her in the elevator and they beat each other up. And then we move on again. And then in the next chapter, we find out that Massimo's people or him, I don't remember, someone from Massimo's team broke this MMA fighter's arms and legs that night because of what happened. So there's that. So then surprisingly, some of these plot points start coming back. So Demencio finds out that Olga had sex with Adam. And then Demencio freaks out and he tries to kill himself and Olga and like he's like breaking everything. And it's like this whole weird scene where he's like tied up in the basement because Massimo wants him to calm down. And then Laura goes down there and she explains everything to him. And then he's like, oh, okay. And then he goes and he proposes to Olga and Olga's like, fuck this, I'm out. I'm going back to Poland. And she leaves. And in that scene, I was like, oh my God, she's the only smart one here. So Laura I think she's mad at Massimo or he's on business. So she's alone for a while and she's lonely because Olga's gone and she's in a fight with her family. And so she calls the MMA fighter ex. So he comes back in the story and they're talking. And during this conversation, she meets this gardener, Nacho, who tells her that he's just been hired. So remember him. So for Christmas, Massimo invites Laura's family and Olga, and they come back for Christmas. And while they're there, Olga and Demencio get back together, so she's not that smart. Then after Christmas, they all go to this like gala thing. And while they're there, Laura gets kidnapped. She wakes up to find herself in a somewhat similar situation to the one where she was in with Massimo. Her kidnapper, Nacho, was the guy we met earlier. That was the gardener. Earlier, forgot to mention, Laura had brought up to Massimo, oh, I met our new gardener. And Massimo's like, who? And she's like, oh, the gardener with like the tattoos or whatever. And he freaks out and he's like, that's another mafia guy or whatever. And it's like, your guys' security sucks. Like this guy was just able to just walk onto the property like and nobody noticed or did anything. And then he's also able to just kidnap Laura and nobody knows, nobody notices. Like she's just gone. I'm like, okay, you really like for being like a mafioso, like you're bad at your job. So like I said, Nacho is a Spanish mafia like head guy's son, and he's been tasked with kidnapping Laura so that she can be used as collateral basically for their mafia to work with Massimo or something like that. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But the sad thing being, this is the most that's happened in this book, and I can't even really remember the fine details. And this part with Nacho, with her being kidnapped, is all within the last 3 chapters, by the way. Like, the whole rest of the book is just nothing until the last 3 chapters when something actually happens. So Laura's staying with him, with Nacho, and he's basically just wanting her to hang out with him. And he makes the slight at her when they're together. And he's like, I have to read it. It was actually kind of a good dig where he's like, well, it worked for the last guy that did it. But let me get you the exact quote because it's important to me. It's only 8 in the evening. You're going back to sleep, he asked as I plodded towards the stairs. Really? I opened my eyes wider. We can watch some movies, he pointed at a couch in the living room. I sent him a confused look trying to figure out what my role in this was. You've kidnapped me, Nacho, and you've threatened my relatives, and now you think you can just watch movies with me? My voice might have been a bit too aggressive. I didn't wait for a response, turning away. Well, the last guy who did that to you will be the father of your child, Nacho muttered, keeping his eyes on his plate. I froze and was about to retort something, but he was right. I bit my tongue and went to my room. This was too strange. I snuggled into my bed and turned the TV on. So Nacho has made it pretty clear that with her time with him, like, kind of like what he's wanting out of this. Like, I feel like he's like over here like, I want a wife like Massimo. Maybe I'll just do the exact same thing that he did with the exact same person. And so he makes it very clear that he wants her. And then like, and then also, which is also kind of strange, she made this big deal about how he bought her favorite perfume for her stay with him. And I remember in my last video or the last books, I remember talking about the perfume or like reading that passage because Massimo had done the same thing. Bottles of perfume crowded the counter next to the sink, and one of them was my beloved Lancome Midnight Rose. At first I wondered how he knew, but he knew everything about me. So much mundane little details like my favorite perfume, which he must have found in my baggage, shouldn't have been a mystery to him. So clearly the author was going for like this thing of like Nacho having some sort of like obsession with Laura, and like, I don't know, or is it a coincidence? I don't know, but he's basically just trying to recreate the first book. But instead of the way Massimo went about it being hyper aggressive and like not allowing her to leave, which Nacho is still doing the same thing, he's not allowing her to leave, but he's just being very nice to her, which is not the way that Massimo had played it. And then we learned that Laura doesn't think that Nacho's too shabby either. She says, I turned to the ocean watching the tattooed, hairless man walking our way with the surfboard under his arm. He looked breathtaking in those tight-fitting pants, his skin dripping with water. If not for the fact that he was my kidnapper and a murderer and I had a husband and was pregnant, I'd have fallen in love with him in that moment. She has a type. And then so it's time for Nacho to take Laura to his father so that they can do like negotiations or something. For her to return to Massimo. He tells her this, she's like excited, and then she says, he'll come for me and make this all go away, but would that be so easy? I sat up and looked at the house, watching Nacho as he ate his breakfast, leaning against the door's frame with nothing but his surfing shorts on. His posture was relaxed, and he slowly chewed his food, keeping his eyes on me. Would I be able to just... go back to normal now, after meeting this child in a man's body? So yeah, she's very quickly taken a liking to Nacho. So, and like I said earlier, Nacho feels the same. He's taken a liking to Laura. And so before he goes to take him to her dad, he's like, you could stay with me. And she's like, no. So we go to the mafia dad's house, and then we learn that Massimo didn't show up, apparently. And then like, it's so random. So enter this other guy. So bear with me, okay? We're going to have to think back to the first book/movie. I don't know if you remember this, but there's a scene, this club scene, where Laura danced with this other guy from a rival mafia, and Massimo got pissed. And I guess this is that guy. And so he's in on the whole charade. And he reveals that he tried to get Anna, the ex-girlfriend, to kill Laura. And that's who was driving during the car chase scene from the first book/movie. And this guy goes on this whole like speech, and he continues to just give away all of these grand plans that he has. But it's not that grand because I don't really know what he's even talking about. Like, for me, it wasn't this grand thing. Like, he's just kind of like hearing himself talk, and I'm just like, is this important? Like, do I need to be taking notes on the people that you're mentioning? I don't really know what you're talking about. And then we learn by the end of his little speech that he is Nacho's brother-in-law. Then Massimo comes into the room, and we have this really piss-poor excuse for a dramatic standoff. They like come to some agreement, but then the brother-in-law 2 times them, and the brother-in-law kills the dad, and then Nacho kills the brother-in-law. And then there's this standoff between Demencio and Nacho, and I'm assuming one of them is a really shitty shot because Laura somehow gets hit. So the book literally ends with Massimo being told that he can only save, or one of them can only be saved, either Laura or the baby, and it ends with him being like, save... ... And I'm going to go ahead and assume that he saves Laura because there's a whole other book. And also this is a really good jumping off point to start talking about the movie, because the movie starts by us learning that Laura had lost the baby. We learn this after an opening scene of Massimo and Laura having sex just right away. Like, that's how the movie just starts. It's a bold move to start a movie that way. But I do have to say, I feel like that's like the vibe, like they were showing, like this is the type of vibe that this movie is going to be. Because this movie, like in comparison to the first one, which it's been a little bit since I've seen the first one, I feel like this second one was way, way, way more sex and like way, way, way less plot. Like, I don't really know if I'm going to have much to talk about with the movie because like almost nothing happened. The last movie ended with the tunnel. And we learn in this movie that because of the tunnel and what happened in there, Laura lost the baby. Massimo never knew about the baby, but we never actually learn what happened in the tunnel. So I was a bit surprised that for the movie that she wasn't going to be pregnant in it, because the pregnancy was like a huge like part of the book. Like, it was constantly talked about like all the time. Like, her and Massimo would always talk about it. She would always refer to it. So I was actually pretty surprised that they just started the movie and were like, no, she's not going to be pregnant in this. So similar to the book, the movie starts with Laura and Massimo's wedding, and thus begins our seemingly never-ending stretches of just straight music videos. This movie consisted of like 70% music video, 20% porn, 5% exposition, and then like 5% soap opera. I don't even know if I've ever seen a movie like this before, where it's basically just all B-roll of them like having sex or shopping or eating with no dialogue, just a song pumping in the background. And like every time a new song would start, I'd be like, oh my God, and like play the entire song from start to finish over these scenes. There were probably 15 music videos within this movie. It was so strange. And then, like I said, there was probably only like 5% exposition throughout this movie. Like, throughout the whole thing, there were probably only like 2 pages of actual dialogue. It was just so weird. Like, I've never seen a movie where it's just music. But then on the like extreme bright side to this, there was like barely any of like Massimo calling Laura baby girl, because there was like no dialogue. So I was very grateful for that, because I cringe at baby girl. I hate it so much. So I feel like I have to touch on the sex scenes in this movie, because I feel like that's like the main thing that's kind of like talked about when it comes to these movies. And like, I understand why. So for this movie, I felt like they were way raunchier than the first movie. Like, I had multiple moments where I was like, how are they allowed to show this? And they went on way too long. And like, it definitely didn't look like the actors or the characters they were playing, like, were enjoying themselves. And like, at some point when you're watching this, you're just kind of sitting there and you're like making a face like you're grimacing. And it's like, okay, this isn't sexy. This is not, like, can we just move on? Like, please. So that's all I have to say about that. Moving on with the movie. Literally nothing happens that's noteworthy in the first half. It was boring and it was slow. I already mentioned the sex scenes. They were mostly in the first half. It was all music video. My husband and I kept checking and like pausing and being like, how far into this movie we are? Like, it feels like it's like really dragging. Like, let's pick up the pace a little bit. Like, basically, it was just like showing their lives, which were surprisingly very boring for being mafia people. Like, it was just on par with the book, where it's just kind of like, you're doing nothing. Like, my life is more exciting than your life. Like, basically, Laura was just, you know, always sick of Massimo working and like of the constant security. And she's such a one-dimensional character because all she wants is just like this raunchy sex. And Massimo is basically just sick of her shit, and he never seems into it. So for Christmas, he's like, here's a company, here's a job, keep you busy, get you out of my hair, basically. So also we have Olga and Demencio having their little love affair, just like within the book, but it's way less dramatic in the movie than it was in the book. They're kind of used as like comedic reliefs almost. Him and Olga were just doing their own thing, man. Like, they were just kind of being very extra the whole time. So at this point, we're about 45 minutes into this like 2-hour porno. And then plot points actually started happening. It's like they were in the writing room doing this script and they were halfway done with it. And they're like, do you think we should add plot to this movie? If it would have been organized a little bit differently, they would have moved the plot up a little bit more. I do think that the movie was organized in this meager plot better than the book. So like we talked about in the book, Laura caught Massimo cheating right away in the beginning and she left. And then, so in this movie, they shoved that to the second half. We're at this gala. It's not explained. It was explained more in the book. It's not explained in the movie. And Laura's parents are there. Also with the movie, there's no tension between her parents. They're just kind of always there. Like, there's no fights, nothing. But they're there and the mom's like, thanks for inviting us. And Drake's like, what is this? What are you invited to? Because there's like these scenes of them like being all like dancing and like everyone's dressed up and it's weird. So Laura is over it. She's over this gala and she's looking fab in her like dramatic goth look. And she fucking looks at Massimo dead ass and is like,
it's enough for me. I want to go back.
And it was bitchy. And Drake lost it. He's like, I'm gonna start doing that at family functions. Be like, look at you and be like, I'm done. Let's go. And so Laura is just like, she's just going for it. So Massimo's like,
I have one more last conversation.
Yeah.
Like, he has had enough of her shit by this point. And so naturally she's mad because she's always mad at him and he's always just trying to work and he's always just trying to like get her to like not be mad at him. And then, bless this movie, now enter sweaty, disheveled, Parent Trap style twin. I died when I saw that they did what I wanted and they Lindsay Lohan'd Massimo. He appears and I'm just like, how do you think that that's Massimo? You just saw him like 2 seconds ago. You think that this sweaty motherfucker is Massimo? So Laura follows him, sees him fucking Anna, asks no questions just like in the book, gets mad, and immediately leaves with Nacho. Oh, and how dare I forget to give you our backstory for Nacho, our gardener. So enter Nacho. He is more in the movie than in the book. In the book, like I said before, we briefly met him and then he was only in like the last 3 chapters. For the movie, he is in the whole second half. Also, let me just show you real quick this little tidbit of us meeting Nacho. Entrance goes on so long and it was so funny. I do have to say, if you're looking for a laugh, maybe you do check this movie out. Like, we were just giggling the whole time throughout watching it. Like, I've just never seen anything like it. Like, just... So, she runs out of the gala and Nacho's there, just out of nowhere. And... she's like, take me out of here, gardener. And it's like, you've met him once. And you're not even going to question why he's at this very nice gala. And you're not going to question this car that he has that's kind of too nice. She asks no questions, ever. And so it's no wonder that she keeps getting kidnapped. But in the movie, she leaves with him willingly, which in the book, she got kidnapped. In this, he was sent there to kidnap her, but then she went willingly. So he's like, okay, this is like the easiest kidnapping ever. So then the whole second half of the movie is basically just B-roll and music videos of them together and her having sex dreams about him, all while Massimo is like falling apart. And then we also have this really extreme soap opera scene with the evil twin and Anna. And Anna's Massimo's ex, and we see like they're plotting, and like the whole scene was just so funny to me because it looked like this like Disney villain scene mixed with like a soap opera, like up until like this random point where evil twin just like kills this guy, like shoots him in the head. It was so random. So then pivoting back to Laura, our star, the whole time Laura is with Nacho, she's again, asking no questions. She's somewhat confused on how he has such nice things since he's a gardener, but she doesn't put too much thought into it. We do get this like kind of funny foreshadowing with like this beach scene and this older gentleman, and also this guy breaks into their house to kill Nacho, and then Nacho totally kills the guy, and which makes it pretty obvious to the audience that he's not a gardener. And it was interesting because I read the book before watching the movie. So for me, I knew that like he was something, he wasn't just a gardener. I knew that he was like a mafia person or whatever. But Drake didn't know, but he's like, it's very obvious. It's like, okay, well, obviously something's happening with him. But then also with their time together, like, it's so funny because they're supposed to be like mafia people, but like, they're not doing anything mafia. Like, he's basically just swimming all day and hanging out in his nice house. Like, he's not doing anything. So during Laura's vacation with Nacho, the movie makes it pretty obvious that she's pretty interested in him because apparently she has a thing for falling for men that she's trapped with. And then she finds out that he's the son of a rival mafia. And then the movie kind of like is wrapping up. He takes her to see his dad. While they're there, they get separated. Massimo is there to do the business and to get his wife back. And again, we learn that these mafia families are really bad at security because they lose Laura. And then we have Nacho and Massimo. They team up to find her in this little like John Wick slow motion montage scenes. And it's so funny, like, because, like, they're just, like, calmly, like, walking together to go find her. And it's, like, you're not even gonna, like, try to, like, run or, like, walk faster to find her. Like, she might be in danger. Like, no. All right, you're just gonna slowly, like, walk there like a cool guy. So we cut to where Laura has mysteriously been carted off to. She's alone in this big type building with the sweaty twin. And she realizes by his lack of tattoos that he's the brother, something she lacked to notice when she got mad before. And then during this whole scene, this whole end scene, it felt like you were just randomly dropped into this random episode of like a daytime soap that's on its like 53rd season, and you just randomly turned it on because you have like this evil twin and then like this upset ex-lover, and they're like spouting off about things that like you don't really care about. Like they feel slighted, and you're just kind of like, what are they talking about? And it's funny because we saw Anna the ex multiple times throughout the movie. I don't know if they ever referred to her as Anna or the ex. And so we get to this point where she walks out and she has the gun. And Drake's like, who is that? And I'm like, have you not been paying attention? Like, that's Anna. And he goes, who's Anna? And so I don't feel like they explained that very well. I feel like there should have been a little bit more because he was completely lost. Like, I don't feel like we explained enough like about the twin and why he was upset and like why they wanted to like go against Laura and all of this. Like, it was all just so like, again, it feels like by the end of the script, they were like, we have to have something happen. And so they're just like frantically writing where they're like, yeah, and the twin's mad. Yeah. So our heroes come in and there we have like these people and they're all just standing and pointing guns at each other. And they're like just trying to figure out how to proceed. And oh man, I do have to say that the actor who was doing the evil twin / Massimo, I feel like when he learned that he was going to be able to play an evil twin in this movie, he got really excited because he was acting his heart out. He was acting completely different than how Massimo did. I thought he was actually doing a very good job of acting crazy, and he was super into being the evil twin and being super unhinged, and he was like making very strange facial expressions and like gestures and like was very poorly pointing the gun at Laura. And I was just kind of like, wow, he is like taking his spot in the spotlight. So everyone shoots. Evil twin is dead. Ex-lover is dead. Laura gets shot, of course, knew that was going to happen. It happened in the book. And Nacho goes to shoot Massimo, but sees Laura's down, and so he leaves. But I was a little surprised because I was like, you're not going to check to see if she's okay? I thought you liked her. Instead, Massimo tends to Laura while Nacho's walking away, and Massimo's like jostling Laura around and like not really doing much like to save her, I guess. And then we just kind of fade to black. And it's the end. So yeah, this movie was just as bad as I had expected it to be. And because you can't really expect something with bad source material to be good. I do have to say though, with the movie, I will stand firm by the fact that it was shot beautifully. Just like with the first movie, they seemingly spent a huge amount of budget on like locations and sets and lightings and the costumes. Like, it had no right to look that good. Like, visually, the movie was beautiful, and it's just a shame that it was all wasted on this script. So overall, if I had to pick, I'd say the movie did it better than the book, mainly because I just can't stand this author's writing, and I thought the book was terrible. I do have a lot of fun laughing at these works. The books are hilarious to read, a little taxing at times, but they are pretty funny. I have a lot of passages that I would like run into the room like that Drake was in and be like, let me read this to you. In the movies, you know, just, oh God, they're just so funny. So since I have so much fun with them, we'll see you again when the third comes out. As always, thank you for watching and spending your time with me. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye!